Welcome to you all for this wonderful occasion we have called the Ask the Entrepreneurs. It's a wonderful collaboration we have between the school and the now company of entrepreneurs who help us out, and we work together in so many different ways. And the Ask the Entrepreneur series has been going for a couple of years now, is one of the most visual manifestations of that partnership. I'd like to introduce James, who's just going to say a few words on the company of entrepreneurs. I think last time I introduced it as the guild, but James, I think you've been promoted. You're now a company, is that right? No idea what it means, but you can tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been promoted, and we're essentially a bunch of entrepreneurs, and we are part of the livery movement, which is a centuries-old movement in the City of London, and support the Lord Mayor. But essentially, we're, as I say, a group of entrepreneurs that get together, enjoy some fellowship. After all, it's lonely at the top, and we all know what it's like to be there. And we get out, we do good work, and you're very kind to entertain us in these evenings, and so that we can tell you a bit more about what it's like at the sharp end of being an entrepreneur and all that involves. So yeah, and if any of your alumni or people want to join us, please speak to me or to Rita or any of the other freemen of the company of entrepreneurs afterwards. We look forward to it.
Okay, lovely. And there will be time afterwards, as I'll go on to say. I love that word. First of all, collective of entrepreneurs is a bunch of entrepreneurs. And second, we entertain you, hopefully in both senses of the word. Okay, so I'll describe how it's going to go. As I say, I'm Jeff Skinner. I'm director of the Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, that logo behind me is at LBS. I'm going to say a few words on the topic for this evening, because we have a different topic every time. Then a couple of, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Rita, and then we'll have two live case studies from companies in our incubator, from Dev and Matt. And then after that, a little bit of networking for those who want it, and breakout rooms between members of the company of entrepreneurs and people at LBS to pick up if any of you want to know how each other works. We're using the Zoom meetings rather than the Zoom webinar, because we're open. It means that the chat is open throughout, and I can pick up any questions or themes as they arise. If something isn't working, then you can send a private chat to my colleague, Rabina, who will probably appear at one of the top on the chat. So this time, the topic is hustle. It wasn't my idea. It came from the company of entrepreneurs, but the second that the topic was mentioned, I seized on it because I think it's a brilliant one. And the wonderful thing about the company of entrepreneurs is that if hustle is important to build a new venture, then there's bound to be someone in their ranks who's done loads of it. And this evening, I should say, that person is Rita Bologna, who has built many businesses in her time. Rita, tell us something about, well, first of all, hello.
Hello.
Hello, and secondly, tell us a little bit about yourself, how many businesses you've built and what sort of businesses those have been and are.
Oh, well, first of all, Jeff, thank you very much for having me here tonight. And even though I've had a whole range of businesses, probably the most interesting one was the Good Global Limited. Started out in my spare bedroom in my home in Essex back in 2006, and I initiated and established the Good Titles, which is the concept of that was publishing luxury magazines and digital versions of the Good Property Guide and travel guides, as well as the Good Wedding Guides. They were similar to the Good Food and Good Drink Guide back then. And I remember being two people at the start of that business. I was actually Rita Cario, which was my previous name, as sales director. And then I was also Tia Tanner, the editor. So when anyone called, I'd have to change my voice to adapt to who they were calling. They would be calling for the editor. I was that person. And then my voice changed as I was a sales director. The perception was, to let people feel that the business was bigger than what it was, and to be able to, ensure I got the sales. So
I suppose this is really an example of inbound hustle, isn't it? We've started already.
We've started already, for sure.
The person who you're trying to be like.
Yes, and then I had my whiteboard to write up the deals, and I also got myself, every time I secured a deal, I wrote it on the board and gave myself like sales targets every week, as well as had a bell, and I'd ring the bell each time I secured a deal. And that was just a way of motivating myself. And then I came up with further innovations, like the good events and PR company, and I built some key assets within the companies of detailed databases of high net worth professionals. And these proved to be fundamental within my exit strategy. So it was all good in the end, the Good Global Group, Jeff. It all turned out to be pretty good.
Good. Well, look, we're going to come to specific examples from that, but we've already done inbound hustle. We've already done self-hustle, where you ring little bells and things to motivate yourself and hustle yourself into ever greater action. But, you know, there's most entrepreneurs. Hold on, before we start, we're just going to have a little bit of fun with the word cloud, actually, because we've used this word hustle, and it can be many different things to many different people. So we might as well know what our audience think when we say this word. And my colleague Rabina is going to put up here the link. Here we are, the I Say Hustle, You Think. And I don't know whether you've used this wonderful tool Mentimeter before, but you go to www.menti.com and use and just type in straight away the word 9274, number 92744771, and then you can type in the word that comes to your mind, in fact, two of them, that come to your mind when we say the word hustle. And in you go. I know it works because I tried it earlier. So if you go in there, and all 73 of you, or 71 of you, can contribute to that. I say hustle, you think. Here we go. Oh, resilience, struggling, hard work, grit, boxing. Boxing, lovely. Scamster. That word before. Push, hard work. Agitation, no idea. Oh, well, we've got some ideas for you then. Chasing, agitate, like the word agitate, much better than irritate. And here we go. Okay. Well, we're getting some positive, we're getting some negative. Cold calling, of course, has crept in there. Push, I think it's quite, I'll give it another minute or two, a few seconds, and there we are. Okay, well, we might be able to circulate that a little lot, but that's quite interesting. Okay, so we've got a range of meanings there. But, you know, most entrepreneurs, here we are, I've got a little bit of it. Most entrepreneurs start fairly lonely. There's my man on the desert island, just sitting by themselves with their light bulb of an idea. You know, and it stays that way. It stays that way unless they create, make, buy, sell stuff. And for that, they need somehow to get the hell out of the building and start persuading other people to do stuff. And you've done that in spades. So in my mind, that makes you a hustler. Do you identify with that? Do you take it as a compliment?
Yes, I totally identify with that. We all start alone and nobody knows who we are. Yes, I agree. The definition to me of the word hustle is someone to me who's a go-getter. That's how I see myself. I see myself as a go-getter, an enterprising person, and one that gets what they want. I created, I've made, I've sold, and I got my clients through gentle persuasion and getting them to see things my way. So yes, I take it as a huge compliment, a big compliment. I'm happy to be a hustler.
And you know, a lot of the time it's about persuading somebody in some sort of established business to take you seriously. I mean, literally sometimes knocking at their door and needing to be welcomed in. So you can start that mind-bending exercise that you spoke about, getting to see things your way. Can you give us some examples of times you've done that?
Yeah, well, wow, there's been quite a few, as you can imagine, but one of my most memorable ones I'm going to speak to you about was that the biggest overhead for my publishing business at the time was paying the print invoice, which was the largest overhead we had. And it had to be settled within the strict 30-day terms. So it was like a scramble, you know, trying to get the advertisers to pay on time so that I could pay the printers on time. Otherwise, the next issue of the magazine would not have been printed. So the magazine had some low seasons, i.e. like sort of the summertime, when you couldn't really go out and get the sales because everybody was on holiday. So I decided to ask if I could visit the print factory, to the printer's factory, which was in Bournemouth at the time, so miles away. But I said to the MD at the printers, which were over there, I said, would it be okay to come and have a walk around your factory to come and see? And he was, well, it was a bit shocked really. And I was like, no, I'd love to come and see it. So he was delighted anyway, and they invited me over. And this, yes, this ultimately meant that I got the trip out there, and I got the lunch with him as well. And my ulterior motive over that lunch was for me to get my payment terms to 90 days. And I remember having that conversation with him over lunch. And yes, I managed to get those 90 days, which made me feel an enormous amount of satisfaction, a bit of calm as well, that I was going to get the 90 days, and just boosted my confidence that anything is possible in business. Use your time wisely.
But if you, why did that work? I mean, you going in there, you had this ulterior motive. Why do you think it worked? Was it just that you had built some social capital, or did he like you? I mean, that's one way of influencing people, getting them to like you. What was it?
Yeah, Jeff, there's the likability factor there, yes, but I think more so that I've made the effort to go and show interest in his business. And so we were putting ourselves almost on the same level. I was no longer the person paying the invoice. I became on the same level as him. So we were just together having that lunch, and I said, this is the issue I've got. And I actually said so much more than that to him. I offered him the bigger picture of why working with me would give them what they needed, which was to increase business. So I talked to him about the future of the Good Global Group.
All right. So there's this sense here that what's good for me is going to be good for you ultimately.
Yes, that's right.
Bringing them around, it wouldn't do them any good if you were to go bankrupt, and therefore is brilliant.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got, I know when we spoke earlier, you had these wonderful examples about getting past blockers and things, because in that case, you were lucky enough to speak to the gaffer, so you got to the decision maker. But most of the time, I think, you just even getting to the person who can make those sort of executive decisions is a problem.
Yeah, so this situation is so different from straightforward cold calling, which, as you know, I've done a lot of. This was a different way of hustling, to bring our overheads down. So I was glad to ultimately meet the decision maker. But when I got myself in front of him, I talked to him about future magazines. It wasn't just going to be the Good Property Guide. It was going to be the Good Wedding Guide. It was going to be the Good Travel Guide, the Good Business Guide. And ultimately, I showed him value for him, for his printing business, that the Good Global Group could bring to him and his printing firm, and the income that it would generate for him, because there was a bigger picture here, and how we could work together and move forward together. And he bought that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, we saw some of the words that are coming out there. A lot of the time people will associate hustle with somehow conning people into doing something that they will regret later. Here, it's being pushing. Here, did you prepare that conversation? We're going to move on to another one in a second, but did you prepare that? Did you think, look, I'm going in there, this person does not realize just what this can become, and therefore it genuinely is good for me? Did you go in with that conviction? Did you believe yourself?
I did. To be completely honest with you, I did. I went in there knowing what I wanted. I had a strategy, I had a vision, I had a focus, and I was going to get those 90 days before I went in. But obviously they thought I was just going to go and visit the factory. But I wanted to then say, well, are you free for lunch now? And I knew that then face to face, having that conversation, that I was going to be able to sell him the whole idea of the Good Global Group and what benefits that would have for him. Yeah.
Okay. So I said, let's talk about getting past blockers, because in that situation, it wasn't easy. You got the meeting, as I said, it was fine. But so often there's this sort of hermetically sealed thing called an organization and a corporate office. In there somewhere is the decision maker who's going to be able to give you what you want, do the deal. How do you get past those blockers?
Well, I obviously had to do a lot of cold calling. So I'll take you.
I would tell us about the cold calling first, because I suppose that's.
Let's go through that first. Yeah, that's right. So it's very tough, as you know, getting past receptionists and PAs and secretaries, etc. But I used to love that challenge. That for me was the best. So, for example, if I was calling a potential advertiser, you need to get through to the marketing director. And of course, the first thing they're going to say, I'm talking about adverts from national newspapers that I'd be looking at thinking, I want that in my magazine. So I would call and I would ask for the marketing director. The receptionist would answer. Obviously, she'd say, well, I'm sorry, they're unavailable. That would be the first thing she would say. So I changed my tact and I'd say, well, could you put me through to the person? No, we don't give names, it's the usual. So then I'd get around this and I'd say, next time I call again, I'll call again a couple of days later and say, I want to post a letter to the marketing director. Could I have the name of the marketing director? And yes, she would happily give me the name because I was posting the letter. I say, thank you very much. I put the phone down. And then a couple of days later, I've now got the decision maker's name. So I would call again and I would then say, can I speak to, say, John Smith or whatever the name was? And the receptionist say, well, will you know what the call's regarding? And it was at that point that I would say, with that voice of authority, of course he knows what the call's regarding, but clearly he didn't know. But yes, I would, however, hustle my way through to that decision maker.
I mean, I suppose if you had said at that point, no, he doesn't know what it's about, and that would be it. And it's also interesting to me that we talk about this voice of authority. Because that's another mechanism of influence is authority. And actually, I don't know whether you realised it, but as you were talking and you said those words, your voice actually suddenly became more authoritative. Something went down in tone. I could actually hear the difference. What's that all about? Because again, that's so artificial, isn't it? Like we speak with authority, and what? Why does that work?
Well, Jeff, I always used to tell my sales staff, imagine you're not sitting at home or in an office somewhere. Stand up and look out the window and imagine that you're sitting on the 20th floor of a beautiful office block overlooking Park Lane. That's what I used to say in central London. And talk with that picture in your mind and ooze with that authority in your voice. So you have that clear tone with a strong vision and you know exactly what you want from that call. And you try to keep in that mindset that you're equal to the other person on the phone that you are speaking to. They are no better than you. Never feel intimidated, even when you're just starting out in a business. And that worked for a lot of my salespeople, to have that vision when you speak.
Yeah.
So that's
but
where
that's
your
to
voice
get to the people
comes in.
Yeah, that's to get to the people. That's even before you start so-called selling to them.
Right.
So in some ways, you've now got over the blockers somehow, with your Machiavellian tactics. You've done that, and now you're in front of them. So how does it work then? I mean, now this is a whole new script you're coming to now, where suddenly you're having to persuade. I mean, maybe we're going back over old ground here, but
Yeah, but you're right, because then you're through to the decision maker, but then I've still kept that voice of authority, and I've gone past the receptionist, and I'll go in as I'm Rita Bologna. This is what I'm offering. And their ears just prick up straight away because you've got that voice. You're not, hello, it's me, but you're not trying to sell them anything. You're not trying to sell anything to them. You're just talking to them and giving them some ideas about what would be good for them. And that's it.
Yeah. Now, you told another story about haranguing a bank to get money out of them. I mean, haranguing is the wrong word, but there was there a story about actually going and getting, when you were seeking investment? I mean, have you sought investment for your businesses?
Oh, yes. Well, back then, I remember when I was working in that sales and marketing role, I'd made some money. I made about £15,000. Back then with Barclays Bank, you had to actually go in and say, I've got this, so this is what I want. And in my mind, I thought to myself, I remember someone telling me that if you've got an equal match, they'll probably help you. But actually, when I went in there, I thought, well, I need about £15,000 to live on for the next few months or whatever. I'm starting out in this business. But if I tell them that I've also got £15,000 saved up through my hard work as working as a sales and marketing manager for this publishing company, and tell them about my history and what I've done and say, look, I've saved all this through commission. Can you match what I've saved? And it's almost like it put the Barclays Bank manager on the back footer. It was like, wow, that's amazing. Yes, I guess we can. But if I'd just gone in there and say, give me the money, it would have been a completely different story, I think. You have to show you're on the same level as people. And that's when he said, yes, you can have it. And I thought, right, now I've got 30,000. I can set up this business. And that's what I did.
Right. Okay. Is it always the case that when you go into a meeting where you wish to influence, that you have complete belief in what's in it for the other side. I mean, it's trying to differentiate and pull apart here the I'm going to go in and get what I want, and they're going to say yes and regret it later, but it's too late by then, versus I'm actually going in there, as you said at the very beginning, but I have something which is going to be marvelous for them. They just don't know it yet. So I'm trying to create value, in which case you're going in with almost a different point, a different attitude, which is have to be completely crazy not to take this offer because there's so much in it for you. I mean, is that how you psych yourself up for these things? Is that how you prepare? Do you prepare?
Yeah, oh, yes, I definitely prepare. And it's not about going in and being pushy or anything like that. It's more about finding a solution to an issue or a problem for the client. I would go in with that conviction. For example, I'll give you an example. I would be engaging to a potential customer. So I'd ring a potential advertiser or from a competitor magazine, and I'd call them and I'd ask them like probing questions like, do these advertisements work for you in terms of lead generation? Do you get a good response, etc.? And almost they'd start sharing their issues and problems with me. And so I ended up providing them with the opportunity of advertising in my magazine, giving them a solution. They'd start talking about their problems to me. And I'd also then say, oh, well, give them a sweetener. I'd say something like, oh, our editor will be in touch and give you some free editorial next to your advertisement. And people love talking about themselves, don't they? So that would really work for them. And they would feel, yes, Rita's offering us the solution to our problem, which includes talking about our business as well as we buy a small advertisement from her. So everyone was happy.
So did you know what the benefit to the other side was going to be before you went in? Or was it a case of, here we are, let's encourage you to talk about what your issues are, and then in real time have the flexibility of mind to say, ooh, I can do something about that?
Yes, Jeff, it's more of a natural approach. You don't have just a strategy for each person you're going to speak to, or each client. You have to bend towards the client's needs. If they were saying, well, we've not had any publicity, I'm thinking, yes, give them some editorial, this will be great next to their advert for them because they want to talk about themselves. They want an article. It just depends what the client wants. So no, you don't go in there with an exact what you're going to say. You have to listen. And I think listening skills are extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually another example of influence from that wonderful book of the same name by Robert Cialdini, when he talks about consistency. If people talk about the fact they need something, then when you offer that something, it's going to be very hard for them to say, actually, I don't need it after all. And I have to say, there's a huge contrast here between so many of the enthusiastic, passionate entrepreneurs at London Business School, who, when you talk to them, they will talk endlessly about their product. What you're saying is, don't talk about the product, get them to talk about themselves and their issues. And if you've got the right hunch that they might need what you've got, then you can plug what you've got into their needs, which is a really different but valuable way about thinking this. And actually, we'll move on to that now, because you have got other people, so you've got money and you've built these businesses. Now you're an investor in other people's businesses?
Yes, I am.
Or didn't you want that advertised in case you get lots of emails?
Yeah,
after?
I was just going to say, now I'm just going to be bombarded, but yes.
Well, hold on, let's just take that back. What do you think about emails from the entrepreneurial hustle perspective?
Emails in what regard do you mean? Emails?
Well, I mean,
people
there's
who
a
are
way
pestering me for money.
I've got this thing and I'm going to contact you and hope that an email will do the job. Sometimes because it's so much more socially comfortable than doing this thing called picking up a phone and knocking at the door. I mean, it's more in your comfort zone, isn't it? Well, more in, not yours, but...
I'm really old school in that way. I don't really believe in the emails. As you can imagine, I'm pestered for money most days, but whether it's from a startup or an established business, I don't find it in the slightest bit irritating if someone finds my number and has got that gumption to find my number and call me. I actually find that I value persistence. I believe persistence pays off. Persistence definitely pays off. It's one of the best qualities and the highest achievers in the world. And as for persuading me, that is an extremely tough job. I don't buy anything too easily, as you can imagine. And I always look for, people that've got the X, Y, Z qualities in something or someone before I say yes to them. So yes.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, so people pester you for money, maybe more now than they might have done 5 minutes ago. They pester you for money. And I think you've said it can be irritating. And I've always had this distinction between agitating somebody and irritating them. That's my background. But on the other hand, you value the persistence. What is it? Is it that by showing that they're persistent, they really believe in their product, they are passionate, or what is it that you like to see or is attractive to you in the person who perseveres?
Well, I have my own little method going. It's my own private method, and I call it like the XYZ method. So when I'm looking at, initially when I'm looking at somebody for an investment, I'm looking at the X. Have they got, number one, have they got the X factor? So do they look the part? Do they speak the part? And then I say to myself, the why factor. Why would I invest in this person? Why would I open doors for this person? Why would I make this company a multi-million-pound company with my help and advice? So I look at all those things, the X, Y, and Z factor. And the Z factor for me is the zero in on factor. So you've got the X, you've got the Y.
Sorry?
It's the zero in on factor. So this is where you direct all your attention to one thing and you focus on it and you zero in on that customer's real need or issues. So to me, that Z factor, the end of the XYZ, is most important. Zero in on that particular customer's needs or problem and then provide a solution in a persuasive and very articulate way.
Okay, so let's go back, because you said, I want to pick that apart because it intrigues me. The X and the Y is, do they sound the part and look the part, did you say?
The X factor is that kind of va-va-voom factor. I mean, is this somebody I could put in front of a client, or who would walk into a client meeting and be able to hold everybody's attention? Because that's what you've got to be able to do. You've got to be able to hold the room's attention.
Right. So it isn't that they need to grab your attention. It is that if they can't grab your attention, they won't be able to grab anybody else's attention.
Correct.
And therefore they won't be able to hustle, sell like you have. And therefore they're going to fail, however good the idea is. They'll fall over because they're incapable of selling, incapable of hustling, because they can't even persuade you. And if they can't persuade you, then what good are they?
Well, exactly. So why would I invest in someone who I feel can't even persuade me, standing in front of me and say to me, this is what I'm about? So
yeah, that's brilliant. All right. And then we come to the Z factor.
Yeah, you've got the X and then the Y. And the Y is why should I invest? So we've done that bit. And then the Z. The Z for me stands for zero in on. Now, zero in on is zero in on that particular client's problem or issue, and you have to home in on that and offer that customer a solution to it, which is what I've always done. So allowing the customer to speak. So I like people that come along to me and that know when to be quiet, know not when to oversell it, stop when they've got the deal, and then allow me to ask the question, and then they provide me the solution. So it's the Rita's X, Y, Z factor that they have to have.
And I have to say the Z is often lacking in entrepreneurs because they're so full of what they've got, and they talk about the total addressable market and total this and that, the other market narrows down. And actually, these are all surrogates in my view for saying you don't have the faintest idea who your actual persona is, whose problem you're solving and what problem they've got, because they haven't bothered to go out. And anyway, I must get off the high horse here. Now, I'm guessing we're going to open up to the two entrepreneurs any second, but rejection. I think that's what stops a lot of people cold calling. Without trying to get too sort of oh dear about it, have you been rejected many times?
I have. I think my resilience, comes from. I mean, I came to this country when I was only 2 years old. From an immigrant family. I was born in Tanzania. I came here, I watched my father, who couldn't even hardly speak a word of English when he first came. And he became an entrepreneur. First, he started off commission only, selling at Sun Life of Canada insurance policies to the Indian community. And I remember going out with him and just watching him, actually sell, but without selling. People just, had that likability factor. And there were times when he was rejected. But I think when you come through some really difficult times, I've had my own personal challenges. I've been a single mother. I've had a cancer scare back in 2008 in the middle of the Great Recession, when I thought I was just going to lose everything, Jeff. I thought I was just going to lose the business. But no, when I got the phone slammed down on me and having trying for days and days to get in front of a customer, it actually made me want it more. Of course, it was disheartening, but it's those knocks that make you want it more. And you just really force yourself to think, well, I'm just not going to let this grind me down. I'm going to go out there and achieve it. And when you get there, you've got the best thing you've ever, it's the most rewarding feeling ever. It's the best feeling ever. And it's worth every moment as a journey, on the journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, right, you have the depths of when it goes wrong, but when you actually get something, it's the absolute, and I've heard these screams coming from our incubator when somebody's made a sale. I mean, these are the absolute moments, aren't they? Makes it all worthwhile. I spoke earlier about this wonderful book, Robert Cialdini on influence, and I'm just, that prompts me in a roundabout way to ask you whether there's any other top tips here. I mean, I'm thinking about the forms of influence he talks about. One of them is the scarcity value, the fear of missing out. Does that play a part? Do you putting either a time limit on something, or making it clear to them that actually, if they don't do this now, somebody else, I mean, that's one. You've used social proof, liking, reciprocity. I mean, any other top tips here before we move on?
Yes, I mean, all those. I mean, yes, of course, we've talked about persistence and resilience, which are a must, but I use more of the I use the tactics, as you've mentioned, outside of those, which was the fear of missing out tactic and the social proof one. In particular, I would say when I had my magazine, for example, I'd speak to a potential client or potential advertiser, and I'd say, we're only going to run this particular feature on the Seychelles for this one issue, and I have Air Seychelles that are booked in, I have Seychelles Tourism that's booked in, and I throw in a couple of names of celebrities that are going to be in that particular feature. So, and a couple of their competitors as well, of course. And of course, they would feel, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity. And so they would want to book in, and they did book in, and there you go, bang, I've got them as part of the feature. Also, I think finally, liking is extremely important. I think the likability factor brings huge trust, feelings of trust. And my clients like me a lot. And so they were comfortable in knowing that I was trustworthy and they could trust me, and I was going to deliver what I said I was going to deliver.
Yeah. That combines social capital as well. I mean, once you've got that relationship there, nobody's going to screw it up, are they? So that's an extra added. Look, we're going to move on now to a couple of our incubator businesses. I'm going to ask Dev, I think we agreed to come in first. So Dev, if Rubina, you can spotlight him wherever he is, and then the three of us can be up together. Dev, welcome. Of course, the three of us have spoken together already a little bit, and we're now going to play that live and add to that. So, Dev, first of all, tell us a little bit about your business. I mean, what it is, what problem, here we go, take a leaf out of the book. What problem solving for who?
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me in this session. Already a lot of great tips and advice from Rita, so it's amazing. I love the XYZ factor. Anyway, just to kind of talk a little bit about ESG Base, that's the company I'm building. So it's essentially a technical advisor to asset managers. So if you think of asset managers, especially the ones who are investing in infrastructure projects, we're trying to provide them with a range of data and analytics capabilities so they can align their investments to ESG. And for anyone in the audience who's not familiar with the word ESG, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. So those are the three kind of factors that are currently seen as very important to the financial.
Okay, so you've got expertise in this area, and you're selling that expertise to people who want to invest, who want that asset class, but they don't know enough about the asset class to be able to make decent investments. So what's the critical constraint here? Who are you trying to persuade to do what? And then I'll hand it over to the two of you. I'm speaking too much already.
Yeah, so the constraint here is that I think traditionally this has been a service provided by consultants. So it has been kind of very much a service business. And what we're trying to do is essentially convert this to, we're trying to productize the service. So we're building a technology platform that essentially provides the same kind of output as, say, a technical consultant would. And so there's kind of it's a mindset thing. So for the client, it's essentially a case where they have to undergo this change of mindset where they need to believe that a tech product would give them the same quality of output, for example, that a person.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Rita, what are you thinking?
So I'm just thinking, Dev, so who are you actually who are your actual decision makers? Who are you trying to get hold of? Is it like the bank managers, or who is it exactly that you need to speak to?
Yeah, so I mean, bank managers who are giving away debts to infrastructure projects could be ones. A lot of times these are infrastructure funds. So these are kind of dedicated funds that are investing in infrastructure, sometimes by themselves or sometimes with the government. And also there are kind of general funds like asset managers, large asset managers.
But are you showing, Dev, when you pick up the phone to these people and when you get through, which I'm assuming you're getting through, are you showing an edge in your voice? Are you showing that you're different from your competitors? Are you actually showing the power in your voice that says, I know what I'm saying, I am confident in what I'm offering, and you can trust me? Do you think you're able to do that?
I think so. I think I probably come across with some authority, given that I have myself worked in this area for quite some time, have this kind of built-in expertise. I think it's always, the hurdle always tends to be when I say, okay, I'm not offering myself, I'm offering a tech product that will do what I've been doing. So that, I think that's, it kind of makes it slightly different, like as a product idea for them.
But are you showing dedication to your product when you're speaking? Because they're still buying you as a person, even though you're selling that product. You've got to remember each time you speak to them that they're actually buying you, because people buy people ultimately. That's it. It's not your service or your product that they're buying you. So my clients would end up sharing my passion for my magazine, for a PR campaign, or for a corporate event, whatever it was, because there was lots of arms to my business. I had lots of income streams in the end, because one income stream you couldn't just run with all the time. You had to add income streams as the times moved on. So it's showing when you're speaking to that bank manager that yes, they're on the same level as you. And yes, this is important for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just to interpose there, I mean, there must be a difference between when they come to you for advice. But when we spoke earlier, I thought you did say that you had a problem getting through to the decision makers. You know, that you found this corporate shield, that it was actually really hard to penetrate when you're doing the push as opposed to the pull.
Yeah. So a lot of times, so of course, there's a group of institutions where I know the people because I might have worked with them in the past, and it's easier to get through those institutions. Whereas there's obviously another group of people who don't know me, and I'm trying to reach them. And first of all, it's not always easy to understand kind of the hierarchy, the decision making, like who are the decision makers and so on. And secondly, when I do, then kind of building that trust is an issue. And I would say, especially kind of now with everything being Zoom based, and you're kind of not meeting them, not running into them in a pub, or not running into them in an event. It's basically just kind of calling them and having a first call with them.
Okay, well, let's take those three things separately then. That difficult finding out who is a decision maker, number one, difficult reaching them, and then let's take head on this whole thing of we can't even go to meet them, so we have to do this over Zoom or some other medium, hopefully not for much longer, but certainly at the moment. Rita, this is something we didn't talk about, which was how on earth do you find who the decision maker is anyway?
Well, I mean, you know, we have Google. I mean, are you Googling and finding out the decision maker? And LinkedIn, we have social media, we have the internet. I mean, right now you can find out, Dev, anyone's name from Google, from anywhere. literally by putting in the name of the bank and finding out who the main decision maker is. And if you can't get straight through to that person, I mean, it's going to be somewhere. The name of that person is 100% going to be somewhere. But yes, I understand it might be difficult to get straight through to them, but you can find out who their assistant is, who their junior is, and start off in that way, but with that phone call. And even if you do things like Twitter, I don't know if you do Twitter, but I have met so many decision makers through Twitter. I mean, you just end up following them. They follow you back. And then you're right, okay, that's the beginning. And then it's like a quick one line on Twitter, a direct message to them saying, I would love to talk to you at some point if you have a moment free. I have something that you might be interested in. But don't do a whole great big sale cold email explaining the ins and outs of what it is you're offering. Make them feel intrigued about what it is you're going to tell them about, and just give a little bit of bait, you know, like you do with the fish. Just throw in a little bit of bait until you catch that fish, reel them in. And then when you get to have that conversation with that person, that's when you say, so it's gently catch the monkey.
But that bait, is it telling them about other people who have loved this thing? You know,
absolutely. Absolutely. So you can say, you know, that I wouldn't say too much at the beginning. I would just keep them intrigued. That's the way I've always done it. But I would say, this is what I do. You can even mention a couple of people that's in their competitive field that have used your services. I've done that before, yes. Or I'll just say it's something I feel that I have to talk to you about that I think you'd be interested in. And it's getting them aroused. And then they'll say, okay, right, fine, here's my phone number. And then you're on your way because you'll speak to the first person. And they'll probably say, oh, actually, this is not my area. This is not my decision here. I'm going to pass you on to somebody who makes the decision on this. And it's at that point, you're 50% there. So that's kind of how you get there. It's difficult, I know, when you're trying to get to a top bank manager, but there is a stepping stone and a way to get there.
And is that true, that the people who are at the top have some sort of social media presence and they're not hiding? I mean, in one sense, it sounds like they'd try to be hiding. In the other sense, opinion leaders and leaders and decision makers, presumably they have to be at the center of information because that's where they're getting their information from.
True, Jeff, and they have to be seen, and that's why they're there on Twitter. But it might not even be it's them that's doing their own tweeting, or it's them that's doing their own LinkedIn messages. You know, I wasn't doing it for the Good Global Group. I had a fantastic PA that was doing a lot of this for me. But little did they know, they thought they were talking to Rita, but they weren't actually talking to me. They weren't. But she would say to me, or this particular client had said, or this particular person wants to know. And I'd say, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds quite interesting. So I'm at the other end now. But when I started out, and this is what I did, I thought, well, actually, I'm talking to the decision maker, but I wasn't. I may have been only talking to their assistant, but that opened the door for me. And that's all you need. You just need to get that door open. So try definitely through social media channels. Even I, at this age, have had to now understand that is the way forward. And it's not as easy as it used to be and just picking up the phone.
I have a few of my people probably saying, oh, listen, Jeff, listen, because I don't do that very well either. Okay, well, we've added a new word. We've gone from irritation to agitation to arousal. So we can have that little one in. Glad I didn't say that. Okay, so Dev, thanks very much. We're going to let you go, and I'm going to invite in Matt from meet.mba. Matt, where are you? Let's get you spotlighted, and in you come. Wonderful. So same thing. Tell us what problem you solve for who, and what's stopping you.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Rita. I've been making sort of furious notes on the advice you've been giving Dev. Really, really helpful and quite analogous to the situation I find myself in as well. So I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Meet, and we build virtual campuses for educational institutions, so business schools and universities, and we're really trying to help support the school to provide the sort of networking and communication side of the experience, and really empower the community to drive itself and to build itself going forward. That's our ultimate goal.
Okay, can I just pick up? I'm going to practice this Z thing that Rita was talking about. Demonstrate to me that you actually understand whose problem, because people sell to people, whose problem are you solving? because, you know, I'm at LBS. You're not solving my, well, you probably are, but let's pretend you're not solving my problem. Whose problem are you solving?
Well, we're a founding team of MBAs. We've had the fortunate experience of going through the entire business school process. So we're tackling the challenges that we had when we were sort of as admits, as students, and now as alumni.
So you're going to buy this thing then, are you?
I wish, of course, I wish I had it when I was back at start.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. Okay, so where's the challenge? And Rita, let's pop in here when you detect something you want to pull apart. Where's the challenge? What's stopping you from being rich tomorrow?
The biggest challenge that we have is that the issues that we're solving, the frustrations that we're helping solve, are experienced by not the people who pay for the product. So we sell to a business school, to a university, and they can be quite disconnected from the experiences that their students or admits, the students and alumni are facing. So something that we have to really help or try and focus on is to almost educate the administrators to say, look, this is what's going on in your community right now, and this is how we can try and help them. That's a big challenge. Now, COVID has been very helpful for us in that regard, because especially with business schools, that there was a lot of pushback from the business school community saying, well, where's the network gone? Where's the community gone? I'm on a Zoom lecture, and that's the interaction that I have with my classmates. And that's really helped administrators kind of focus and hone in on the fact that, well, is there a scalable way of providing a community internationally, not just based on a few interactions on campus face to face?
And are you using like word of mouth tactics? And are you actually trying to get, you know, your admits to speak to their friends at other business schools? And what about, you know, because obviously consumers believe, you know, and they trust in their friends more than anything else. But I think 92%, isn't it, of consumers that believe and trust in what their friends say. So what about your admits and offering them some sort of incentive for them to go off and speak on your behalf?
It sounds obvious, but that's never really occurred. I almost feel like I don't want to badger our wonderful admits and sort of say, hey, by the way, the experience that you're having, could you please go off and tell other business schools?
It's certainly
what's
far from badgering them. You know, they're having a wonderful experience with you, and I'm sure they want to share it, is how you would word it. And you would even possibly offer them some sort of incentive to do it. You know, that's the way I would approach it, for sure. I mean, why not? It's one of the most powerful ways of getting more business is through word of mouth. So 100%, I would say to them, you know, if you go and speak to your colleagues, your friends that are at this business school or that business school, and you tell them what we're doing here, then I'd be more than happy to offer you some form of incentive. It could just be something small. But yes, I think incentives work. I think that's one way you could increase business.
Is there something underlying here? You sort of, I don't want to have them badgering. I mean, from what I saw earlier on, Rita, what you were saying is that you believed in every ounce of you in that what you were selling was going to be good for your client. And there, if you take that sort of attitude, then it's almost, it's wrong to hold these people back. Because everything is going to be better if only they get out there. I don't have to be apologetic or feel I'm badgering. I can get out there because anybody I'm going to talk to is going to benefit from this.
Yeah, you see, Matt, yes, like Matt, I think persistence, as we talked about earlier, pays. But if you show that enthusiasm, you're not badgering. You can just pick up the phone to the admits and say, look, I'm really excited about my business and what I'm doing. I mean, these are going to one day themselves be entrepreneurs, I'm sure. So they're going to want to feel that entrepreneurial spirit, all the essentials of an entrepreneur: communication, passion, focus. You know, all those things are absolutely vital. And if they feel that from you, they're going to want to go and relay that to their peers and their colleagues. So I think it's got to come from you as the owner of Meet MBA to show them that that's what you really want, and that's what they should see it through your eyes. And I'm sure they will if you say it in that way. And they'll probably come back and say to you, I found this, I found that out. And they'll feel like part of it. Inclusion. Make sure you include them. Make them feel included. It's that inclusion thing. Don't let them think they're doing a favor for you, because they're not. They're being included in this. And so you're doing it together. And I think you've said in the future that you want an advisory board. I think you've mentioned, and you want to attract the right people. So everyone likes a problem to solve. So I would say I'm working with you on this problem. And are you able to help me? You're working together on the issue. You've got to look at your competitors, someone that is held in high regard, and what they would actually think is ideal for you. And you say to them, this is what our competitors are doing. This is what I really want to do. Can you help me with this?
There's a little bit here of the role of money, isn't there? Because you think that somehow you're the one who's giving me money, whereas everything I've heard this evening from you, Rita, is actually no. I am giving you value.
Absolutely.
There's a make weight, and money is acting as a make weight. I mean, how else is the world supposed to turn around? But actually, don't let this sort of apologetic thing, and we don't like talking about money, get in the way. Yeah, of course, there's money, but the value that you're getting out of this far outweighs the tiny little sum that you're going to tip me with.
Yeah, never think that you're badgering, hassling anybody. You are giving them. You are offering them a service, a product, whatever it is you're offering them, and they need you. And you've got to really have that. It's that confidence again. It's that you've got to ooze with confidence. You've got to have that air of, I am doing this for you, even though ultimately you're making money out of it. But that's got to be the furthest thing from your mind, is that you're making anything out of it. I've always felt as if I care for people and help people and I'm giving them something. And I think with that kind of humble sort of attitude, and if you talk in that way, with that kind of diligence and etiquette, I think people buy that pretty well. They don't even know that they're being sold to.
Mm-hmm. Any other obstacles? We've got another couple of minutes before we this particular time is up. Anything else that's making you think here, Matt, about what you should maybe be doing or finding difficult for reasons you don't understand?
I guess because we're about to launch a fundraise, we're going to be now embarking on a whole new area of hustling, not just trying to win business from new clients and new business schools and universities, but also kind of knocking on the door of investors and trying to find the right investors that can also help help us grow the business going forward in the right directions. That is very much a hustling process, in the sense of trying to find people in common, trying to tap up the LBS network to see where your classmates have ended up, anyone in VCs, and then very much learning from that experience and in evolving your story to be suitable for that type of investment and that scale of investment that we're going after.
Rita, anything you've heard there that you would be approaching in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously defined your goal, and you've got a strategy, and you've chosen probably your online fundraising platform, I would imagine, as well. And I think there's sort of 5 hustle tactics, to get your co-workers and your colleagues on site and get them to give you a list of names and email addresses and build a mailing list. That's one of the first things. You need to send out at least 3 to 4 appeals, I'd say, a year. You also need to go viral using social media, like channels like Facebook and Twitter, with a colourful request to donate, a very colourful request to donate. And you need to hold some sort of special Zoom events to encourage, at the moment, while we're in this kind of pandemic still, yes, try and have some virtual Zoom events that are just for you, just for MBA, just for Meet MBA, where you're encouraging potential investors. And these have all come through people that you know and word of mouth. This is why we need to go back to the beginning and get those admits to start helping you out.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have all sorts of problems with all those other business schools. I can tell that already. And never underestimate the subversive power of students. I think I learned a long time ago that if you want to change the institution, then the best way to do it is to create a mini insurrection in the students, who then Go and demand it. Oh my God, thank goodness I don't need this job anymore. Okay, right. So now I think we're almost there, actually. Thanks, Matt, for opening up. Thanks, Dev, likewise, for opening up. Rita, I mean, the last few words to you, if you have any. Otherwise, we'll wrap up because we're almost there.
I just want to say, first of all, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to yourself, Jeff, and Matt and Deb. And just for people to really go away with these entrepreneurial essentials, having a vision, knowing exactly what you want, ask yourself questions, passion, energy, a work ethic, create an opportunity, all those things, communication, sales, and perseverance, be resourceful, open-minded. And the 3 words I'd like to leave you with, which is what I was told when I was only about 21, I think, and it was probably by my father, but it was, yes, I can. And so just keep those words in your mind every time you think of entrepreneurial journey and entrepreneurship. It's, yes, I can. Yes, you can achieve it, and you will. As long as you keep that mindset, then everybody will have a very successful entrepreneurial journey, just as I have. So thank you.
Lovely. Well, Rita, thanks very much for sharing everything. A huge thanks to the Company of Entrepreneurs for helping us to put on this event for you and for us. As you can tell, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think you have as well, and it's great. So thanks to Rita and our 2 founders for allowing themselves to be probed so extensively in public. I really hope at the next event, or if not the one after that, we'll be back on campus with real mingling and real nibbles and real drinks. But that's it. So thank you all very much, and cheerio in the big group.